Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with co-hosts John McCaskill and Will Schneider. Each week, we take an authentic dive into how mindfulness continually impacts our lives, deepens our relationships, and allows us to be emotionally alive. We filter all of our conversations through the man box, where we unpack how as men we are expected to act in society, how fighting the authentic human experience is exhausting and damaging, and how mindfulness can help. Now, on to the show.
All right. Hey, welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness. Here, John McCaskill here with my brother from another mother, Will Schneider. And I am trying to find my notes, but hey, we are 100% unapologetic and raw, authentic. Today, Will and I are going to be speaking about the beginner's mind. It's something that's very important, something that's very easy to foster, and we're going to be defining it. Before we do that, I want to get into our first sponsor, Naked Warrior Recovery Supplements. Naked Warrior is a service-disabled, veteran-owned and operated supplements company owned by a fellow Navy SEAL. They offer a range of supplements from super greens for energy and recovery to broad spectrum CBD products to immune defense. And we'll be putting the website in the links here shortly or in the comments. But go to that link, check that out, and enter the code MTM2021 to get a 20% off discount. And again, we'll be putting that link in the comments. But with all that said, Will, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you, John. Good to be back. We are episode number 12 for this season. You believe that? Episode number 12. Yeah,
it's crazy, man. Time's flying. And we're getting great viewership on the lives and getting great questions. Really appreciate the engagement on the lives. And it's just been phenomenal to watch not only the live engagement, but also the comments after the show. People are sharing the show. So it's really great to see. And I'm loving being on this journey with you, brother.
Yeah, same. And I'm super grateful. Well, for you, John, for helping to create this space and the willingness to have these conversations, as well as everyone out there that is getting involved. And we really appreciate so much the comments, the shares, the reviews, the 5-star reviews, the subscription to the podcast. Every week, John, I'm just fueled with more passion, with that responsibility I feel just to kind of move this conversation forward and just have more fun with this as well. I mean, that's really what this is about for me so much. It's a great platform to have some fun. And
it is, man. Have some fun. But yes, exactly. That last part right there. Have some fun. I so look forward to the show every week, and I'll always come out of it energized. But also, we're helping people, right? Spreading awareness, spreading mindfulness, spreading love and compassion for one another. And that's definitely things this world could use more of. Always. But in particular, I believe right now is the timing is perfect for it. Yeah. So that said, if you're tuning in for the first time, again, it's Men Talking Mindfulness with John McCaskill, Will Schneider. I'm a recently retired Navy SEAL. I live in Colorado Springs. Will is out there in New York City. We've actually never met face to face, but we are brothers. Love one another, and I love working with you, Will. Today's show, specifically what we're going to be talking about again is that beginner's mindset. And we'll get into that here shortly. But what we do on all our shows is we kick it off with a grounding practice. We wrap it up with a grounding practice. And we also talk about our mindful moments for the week. So that said, if you feel comfortable viewing or listening, go ahead and get into a comfortable position. I like to plant my feet firmly on the ground. I uncross them, put them both firmly on the ground. I put my hands on my lap. I open my palms up and I put them face up. That invites a feeling of vulnerability. I apparently need this practice for myself, calm myself down. So that invites that feeling of vulnerability, which taps into the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us to calm down, which again, I probably need right now. I've had too much coffee this morning. And then if you feel comfortable doing so, go ahead and close your eyes. Otherwise, just soften your focus and very acutely bring your attention to your breath. And we'll start with 3 deep cleansing breaths. Begin by breathing out all your air and breathing deep in through the nose. And then nicely and slowly letting that breath go, slowing the exhale, really tapping into that parasympathetic rest and digest. Another deep breath in, breathing deep down into the belly first. Expanding that belly and your chest. And then nice and slow exhale, paying attention to the contracting of your belly and your chest as you breathe out, nice and slow. One more, deep in through your nose, down in your belly, into your chest. And nice and slow, letting that go. Again, focusing on the physical sensation of breathing as you breathe out. And then just breathe naturally. Bring your attention to the space that you're in, the feeling of being in that space. What do you feel? What do you hear? What do you smell? Can you feel air passing over your skin? Can you feel your feet planted on the ground? We rarely feel or rarely think about the feelings of our feet, but it's always there. And if you can bring your attention to the soles of your feet and the feeling there, that can really get you into the space and into the moment, into the here and now. And then just think and let your mind go for the next few moments, just letting it go, relaxing, being present. And then finally, let's wrap it up with one more deep cleansing breath. Begin by breathing out all your air. And breathe deep down into your belly through your nose. Deep, deep, deep. Hold it. And let it go as slowly as possible. Slow, slow, slow. Noticing the air passing your lips as you breathe out. And when you're ready and on your own time, go ahead and open your eyes or blink your eyes. Start to come out of the practice. And here we are. Bring yourself back into the space that you're in. Invite some movement back into your body. Will, thanks for letting me lead that, brother. Thanks for allowing me to ground. And thanks for this space again, man.
No, same. It's good to be here again, John. I'm just bringing up the live feed here just so you can watch our comments come in for the show.
For sure.
But tell us about your mindfulness moment of the week, John. What do we got over there in Colorado Springs with all the snow?
man, we had lots of snow, and there were plenty of mindful moments as I was starting to shovel that snow, as I was moving from the snow shovel. When I realized that wasn't going to do the job, I moved to the snow blower, and then realized pretty quickly that that wasn't going to be able to do the job. So literally outside my garage door, there was probably 3 feet of snow there. So I wasn't able to move the cars out into the driveway until I got the snow blower out, cleared just the first like 10 or 15 feet outside there, and then realized that I have, I don't know, several hundred feet of driveway. I live out in the country, and the snow thrower wasn't going to cut it either. So I had a neighbor come over with a tractor and a plow, and he plowed my full driveway, and I was able to get out. But that does actually tie into my mindful moment of the week, and my mindful moment had to do with just that. I moved to the country, and our houses are fairly distant from one another, and I've never actually met any of our neighbors. Oh. and I felt pretty bad about it, and I was like, geez, I was feeling pretty bad about it last week. I even told my wife, hey, maybe we should just get some cards and go and put them in their mailboxes and let them know, hey, we're here in the neighborhood. We'd love to meet you guys, whatever. Lo and behold, the universe worked its magic, dumped on us as far as the snow. and I had to walk around. I had to walk over this like 6-foot heap of snow at the end of my driveway, walk out into the road, and then walk down the street to the guy that had the tractor. I'm like, hey, I know I've never met you before, but I am in desperate need of some help. I am a rookie. I'm a rookie to these snowstorms. Could you come and plow my driveway? And sure enough, he did. And I was so appreciative of his help. And he was just super kind. And, you know, come back to some of our conversations in the past where we as men, we don't like to make friends. It's kind of difficult for us to say, say that again. We like to make friends, but it's difficult for us too, especially as we get older, as we get kind of more reclusive or more wrapped up around our jobs or whatever. Sorry, this is a really long mindful moment, but bottom line is I made friends with this guy. Not only did I make friends with him, he came and helped to plow my driveway. I offered to go and help to, clean his horse stalls for him. And we've talked several times since then. And he was actually he actually came down to my house and brought some kids' clothes that his kids have long since grown up and moved on. And he's like, oh, you guys have kids? Here you go. Here's some clothes for them. And, you know, they're like country clothes. So it was pretty awesome. And it's just the mindful aspect of that is just the compassion that we can show for one another. And he showed great compassion in coming and plowing my driveway with his tractor. And I was so appreciative of that. And that's the mindful moment from my side is the appreciation, the gratitude that we can show for one another. So that was my mindful moment for the week.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate hearing about the vulnerability, John. Ask for help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
This ties right into today's show.
Yeah, exactly. Asking for help and say, hey, like I'm stuck. So good on you, man. That's beautiful. This week I have an aunt, very, very, very dear aunt of mine, passed away a few years ago at 108 years old. 108. That's not like,
Thanks.
Yes, I know. I knew her my whole life, and her birthday passed on. She's 100% Italian, but her birthday is on St. Patty's Day, March 17th.
Oh wow!
And I honored her. Like I've never really kind of done this. I mean, she really gets to me, John. My God, she goes right there every time I think about her. And just to honor her in like, I posted on a little bit about her. I talked to some friends. I went back and watched some videos about her just because, we just shared a lot together, and I really loved and cared about her so much. But I feel like she's still with me in a lot of ways. But that was like a big deal for me today or this week, just kind of honoring her birthday and our life together. And how much we shared and cherished, and all the love I have for her, and how she was my biggest fan. And I know she'd be so proud of what I'm doing with the podcast and all the work that I'm doing. And that was like a big moment for you this week, just to, instead of ignoring it and be like, no, and pushing down those feelings and not wanting to get upset, or be emotional, and just being with that. And then I had some Irish whiskey. It went there, brother. It just went there. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go make it. So,
hey, St. Patty's Day, man.
St. Patty's Day with my Italian aunt at 108 years old. So that was like,
and you said
fun for me.
You said that she would have been proud of you. I'm sure she was proud of you. Prior to the things that you mentioned, I'm sure she was proud of you, and just the fact that you can speak so lovingly about somebody in your family openly, on a podcast here with our millions of listeners. one day, millions of listeners.
Next year.
I think that's great, and showing that vulnerability, man, shows who you are, the true character. And I love you, brother. So thanks for that mindful moment, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, man, let's get into the beginner's mind, man. Beginner's mind. What is it? What's important about it? How can we foster it for individuals and for teams? and what the heck is it even? So
Yeah.
man, I'll let you jump into, you're always the definition guy. So you want to jump in with a definition or something close
You know
to
what? Okay,
definition?
good. Yeah, well, you know what? I mean, so I like to go to the, the classics, like the sages that are great teachers of our humanity. And, one of the great Zen master, but his last name is Suzuki. He says, oh, and I'm trying to find that in our notes here, John. Here he goes. He goes, um, well, yeah. So in Zen Buddhism, right? They have this definition of beginner's mind. It's called Shoshin, 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 and it stands for beginner's mind and refers to having an attitude of openness, eagerness, and lack of preconceptions when studying a subject, even when studying at an advanced level, just as a beginner would. And and the master Suzuki says, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. So I think it's a great way to kind of drop us into this, because I was in a meditation session earlier today with the male student, and I told him about the topic today. He's like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, like it's very near and dear to us, but it's like, okay, so let's just get basic and break down what this means." Referring to attitude, openness, eagerness, which is that curiosity, a lack of preconceptions when studying a subject. That's a big concept, especially to that know-it-all mindset, right? And shifting into that learn-it-all, which we kind of learned from, reinventing masculinity with Ed and Ed. Well, what are so I mean, John, why are you actually brought this to us, right? To Men Talking Mindfulness. So what is it that kind of tickles you as far as like why this concept for this show?
Well, I'll tell you that, in the military, specifically as a leader or designated leader, because there are leaders, we talked about this in leaders versus bosses. There's leaders throughout the rank, but as a designated leader by rank, there is almost like a desire to never be seen as someone who doesn't know the answer. As a matter of fact, someone sent me a clip this morning from an old submarine movie with Matthew McConaughey on it. And Matthew McConaughey, I forget which movie it is, but he's the commander of the submarine. And at some point he says, "I don't know." And one of his guys pulls him aside and, pulls him to a place where they can talk privately. He's like, "Hey, you're in charge. You can never not know. You must always have the answer." And I think that's an attitude that truly is fostered within the military. And it's a dangerous attitude. It's a dangerous attitude. It's an attitude that leads to a lack of growth. It's an attitude that leads to lack of innovation. And by acting like you know it all when you don't, it can cause bad decisions to be made.
Why is it dangerous, John?
That's where it's dangerous. It can truly, you can be arrogant, not know the answer, and then act as though you do, and make a call on the battlefield that can cost lives. So it's near and dear to my heart in that aspect of things. And then the flip side of things, so leaving the military uniform behind and being a father, I see my kids. I have a 4 and a 2-year-old, and they are asking why all the time about everything. And I find it really, I got to admit, there are times when I'm like, "Oh my gosh, stop asking why." I don't say that, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, enough. But at the same time, there are times when they ask why about something that I've never even thought about. And when I have to answer, when I have to take a step back, I'm like, "Oh, why is that?" And like, I'm sure I learned this at some point. I'll give you an anecdotal example. That's redundant, but anyway, I'll give you one.
How aware of you, John?
Yeah. So when my daughter asked me, she was like, when the moon was like half full, she was like, "Oh, I can see the shadow of the earth on the moon. Why do I see the shadow of the earth on the moon?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, is that is that what she's seeing? And I'm sure, like I said, I'm sure I learned this years ago when I was in grade school, but I've long since forgotten. But I was like, what causes the phases of the moon? And I was curious about it, and I looked it up, and I was like, oh, the phases of the moon is actually the shadow of the moon on itself. An eclipse, a lunar eclipse, is the shadow of the earth on the moon, whereas the phases of the moon. Anyway, the reason I even go into that is it taught me something, and I didn't say, hey, I know it all, and that is the shadow of the earth, or I know it all, and this is such and such. I was like, you know what? That's a great question. What is that? Why is that? And, again, that's an anecdote, but you expand that to life, that constant curiosity, you wanting to learn. We talk a lot, beginner's mind. We talk about growth mindset. You may hear that term a lot more often in corporate America or in mainstream media. Growth mindset, they're very similar. You want to learn, you're curious, you want to grow. And so that's what the beginner's mindset is. And that's why I felt it was so important to me, both as a former military leader and as a father. I need to foster that beginner's mindset. So that's why.
No, thanks. And you're dead on to. It's interesting to just bring, to how do we get to this beginner's mindset? And it's that eagerness, it's that willingness, I think the big thing for what we're continually tapping into for the show with masculinity is like letting go of control. Like that's a big part of this, is just letting go of the know-it-all, which is part of that controlling system, or part of the elements or ingredients of being like master controller. Everything's got to be done the way I want it. And then just taking a step back, and instead of being this authoritarian in every situation or dictator, right, being the follower, being the student, stepping back and softening the mind, softening your attitude, softening your also the energy and emotions that kind of come with being in this constant state of wanting to control everything, and just taking a step back and taking a grander view. And that's like, I think it's interesting, like when you talk about your daughter and that curiosity. I mean, what a great moment for you to learn something, for you and your daughter to learn something together. Like you can go watch a documentary, read a book, and just kind of like dig a little bit deeper and just learn together. I think, children, I think John are a great example. I mean, obviously a wonderful example of the beginner's mind, but learning from them, like they're the true, Zen masters of Shoshin. Because they're always like, why, how, what, what is this? And what are the opportunities, John, when we peel away all the structures of being confined, whether it's a male or a female, being confined in a box of being a know-it-all and going into being a learn-it-all. Like, it's like, what are some of those qualities, John? Like, we have a nice little list here, but let's just kind of dive into those. I think it'd be a great way to kind of continue this conversation.
Let's see. I'm scrolling through my notes too.
Vulnerability. Right. We have openness, willingness. Keep going.
So willingness, courage, curious humility, patience. Patience is a huge one for me. Again, I need to foster that. So that comes with practicing the mindfulness and meditation that we are obviously here to talk about. But the beginner's mind that gets fostered through mindfulness and meditation can lead to that patience, flexibility, listening, acceptance of failure. And that's another thing. As an entrepreneur, people talk about failing fast, failing forward, and learning from your mistakes. That I think is another aspect of beginner's mind. But then also being playful. And hey, to be playful, that's an aspect of enjoying life. So that's huge. And then wonderment. And I love that term, wonderment. Like or awe, right? A sense of awe. Like having a beginner's mind, or having a beginner's mind versus the other side of things, being that quote unquote expert. Like you can, as an expert in everything, again, quote unquote, expert in everything, you can walk into probably like the Sistine Chapel and not be in awe, because you're like, whatever, I'm an expert on that. Whereas a beginner can walk into the Sistine Chapel or any other beautiful scene, or listen to a beautiful song and just be in awe of that. And I think that's something that we get less and less these days, is the the time and the opportunity to be in awe. And I think that that is a part of really living a fulfilling life, is having those moments of awe. Wow, this is beautiful. Wow, this tastes great. Wow, this, wow, just that wow, that wonderment. So I think that's important, man.
Big one. Like there's a great quote that you just bring up, the kind of the dichotomy of like the playfulness versus like the know-it-all. And I've been using this quote by Dostoevsky for years because it really spoke to me a long time ago when I first read it. And he says, and this is in his book, Notes from Underground. And he says, I cannot become anything. And the character that's speaking this line is like an older character in the book. Like he's at his dying ending days and he has this epiphany. And he says, I cannot become anything, neither good nor bad, neither a scoundrel nor an honest man, neither a hero nor an insect. And now I am eking out my days in my corner, taunting myself with the bitter and entirely useless consolation that an intelligent man cannot seriously become anything, that only a fool can become something.
Wow.
And I know that's Dostoevsky. And I love that quote and that distinction between like the know-it-all, the intellect, right? And the guy's all confined and just holds their nose up to the world and versus like being the fool. And in order to get into like being the fool, that's where the playfulness comes in. That's where being courageous, which we talked about, courage requires heart, right? That's where the word courage comes from. The French and Latin root word for heart is cur, and stepping forward and just trying. And and I think an important part you brought up earlier, John, is forgetting about the results or what they should look like. I'm under the philosophy or under the mindset of there is no such thing as failure. Right. Actually, there is failure when you don't take whatever feedback you have from whatever thing that you do or attempt that you make. Right. It's failure if you don't take that feedback and try, recalculate, renavigate a little bit, fine tune, and then try again. Right. Get back up and try again. Like that's like another this could go for wanting to become more mindfulness, take on mindfulness practices. You can start to develop more of that, soften into the beginner's mindset by doing something that you've always been curious about: cooking, dancing. We talked earlier before the show about men doing yoga, and having preconceived notions about like yoga and what it's for and how it's, feminine or this or that or whatever, and just stepping up and trying it and letting go of that toxic know-it-all, right? Know-it-all or kind of know-it-allism kind of mind and attitude, and
maybe that's also like that's a book we should write, man. Toxic know-it-allism. Rather than focusing on toxic masculinity. Man. And I'd love to go through some like personal examples, right, of where we've either been the beginner and practiced that beginner's mindset, or the other side of the spectrum where we've been the quote unquote expert and hey, we know it all, man. I ran into that several times in the military, and I've run into it even since leaving, both sides of that, where I'm playing both characters. Since leaving the military, or not since leaving the military, but since having kids, and that's kind of crossed over from when I was in the military until now. I thought going into fatherhood, which is so arrogant, that I knew it all. So I have 3 older sisters.
Having not been a father before. Yeah.
Having not been a father, right? Right. I have 3 older sisters and they have children. And, and I would go home and visit them, or I, see their kids on social media, and I would offer completely unsolicited advice about how to parent. And yikes. Talk about beginner's mind. As soon as my daughter was born, I actually caught her when she was born. I was like, oh shit. I don't know anything about this. And it really opened my eyes to my lack of knowledge of being a father. But since then, I learned something new every day about being a father. I learned something about, physically taking care of my kids. I learned how their actions can affect my emotions, and how I need to take control as the father, as the parent, I need to manage those scenarios. I learned something new every day there. So that's where I was somebody who considered himself an expert, even though I've never had kids. And you know, what's funny is I run into those people all the time now on the other side of things. Like, okay, I am a father now, and I run into people who give me unsolicited advice, and I look at their lives. I'm like, you don't have kids. don't give
You
me
don't have a
advice.
clue.
Yeah. So that's where I think I've been on both sides of that coin in the same, like in the same aspect as a father in fatherhood. I've been on both sides of that. So that's an example for me. And I'm thankful that the beginner's mindset has taken over, because you need to have that beginner's mindset as a father, as a parent, learning something new every day about how to be better, how to be a better parent. So that's my personal example.
Would you have one, actually, John? I'm curious, like, you know, something from the military as well. I mean, expect maybe because like you've rose to like the, I guess one of the most highest ranks as a SEAL or something like that, a commander. I don't know if there's, but like, you know, but obviously you are in a position where people are looking up to you, right? So what is it like to be in that position and then try, or maybe you failed miserably trying to learn something from somebody else? If you have, or you can come back to that because I have examples too.
Yeah, go through
But
your
I thought it'd be
examples.
nice
I'll come
to.
back.
Yeah, okay. I just thought it'd be good because it's like, you know, because here you are in that leadership role, and also a very revered, I'd imagine, leadership role. And then how do you let go of that, you know, and then try to learn something new. But I'll go, John. I have some great examples, you know, and I think, you know, as a teacher, yoga teacher here in New York, for a long time. And I say a long time because it's like, you know, I've developed like, oh, I'm an awesome teacher, right? So sometimes I would like, I would step into other teachers' classes as a student, and I would hear myself like in my mind, like as I'm practicing, like just judging and criticizing, like, you know, what they're saying, how they're saying it, what we're doing, why we're doing it, you know, and then taking myself away from the opportunity from experience of another teacher, right? Because I'm in this confined, you know, narrow view, and also just think of myself emotionally in that state, right? I'm not know-it-all, you know, like lots of I don't know what's the just a lot of attitude, you know, in those moments.
Arrogance.
Instead of, you know, what's that?
Arrogance.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
Nothing against you, brother,
arrogance.
but that's what it is. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Arrogance. I
No,
mean, I've been there myself.
Yeah, I was trying to find the word, just pure arrogance, which, where does that take me? You know, I come out of there probably still pissed off and judging that teacher, and then probably saying I'm never going to go back to their class again, you know, instead of like showing up and just trying to learn whatever they're trying to teach, and also give them the opportunity, even though being a more senior teacher than these are, you know, typically like younger teachers I'm talking about that maybe only have taught a couple years or don't have quite as much experience as I have, that I'm judging them. Another example, like in the in the yoga world, like I was actually asked to be part of a teacher training. So I'm part of a core of teacher trainers that are teaching a new group of students that sign up for the program. And, you know, I just thought I was like this hot shit, and, you know, and just like, just not good examples, John, of being the beginner mind, showing up, listening, being vulnerable, you know, and being open, and all these characteristics that we talked about, you know, being willingness to try, the flexibility, you know, that listening. And again, my arrogance has really screwed me a lot in my life, John. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I mean,
You and me both.
I've been trying to, you know, but I'm glad I'm aware of it. And I'll give you another great example, John, of this is this show. Never done a podcast before, you know, like, and I'm really accessing this from the beginner's mindset, and not trying to beat myself up too much when, you know, last week, beginning show at the top of episode 11, right? This is a great example of, you know, I kind of flubbed the beginning. You know, I had a brain fart, and like I forgot like the name of the book, you know, like, oh my God. And so, or also
and what happened because of that? What happened?
Nothing.
Nobody cares.
It actually
Nobody
was
cares,
great
right?
because in that moment, John, I got authentic. I'm like, I'm nervous, John, right? And
Yeah,
you're like, I can
right.
tell or something. And it just
Hey,
opens up the door to like a great
you're a
show.
human
Um,
being. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me, John. Yeah. Also, other episodes I've gone back and I've listened to earlier episodes, and I'm constantly getting better as a speaker. And I've actually made notes last week after the show because like I was really beating myself up. Like, oh my God, I really screwed up. I sounded like such a fool. Oh God. I was like, and then I'm like, got to a point. It's like, well, how do I never let that happen again? Or how do I take the feedback? All right. And
Yeah.
what do I do with it? So I started, I started, I give it right here, John. I started making some notes about like, oh yeah. So, prepare, right? Just, what we did today, prepare. And then I just wrote here, it's like trust, listen, slow down, and prepare. And that's just like what I'm learning about this show. It's like we want it to be we want it to be spontaneous, but also professional and fine tuned in some ways. And this is just one thing that I learned as being a podcaster, but also being a student of podcasting and not being the ultimate podcaster that never podcasted before. I mean, that's ridiculous, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
And so I want to come back to that. I want to come back to that, but I'll give you the example that I was thinking about for the military, and then I want to come back to being the perfect podcaster. Okay, so the military examples that I had both as a leader myself and that I had seen in other leaders in positions, I did see people claiming to know it all and not having the honestly the courage to be vulnerable and admit that they didn't. And I could see through that. I could see through that as an underling. I could see people saying, yeah, I got this. And then I could tell that they didn't. And I think when I did that same thing, when I acted like I knew it all, I'm sure my people could tell that I didn't. And that not only provided scenarios where I could have made dangerous calls or those leaders above me could have made dangerous calls, it, I believe, degraded the trust in the team. So, having the strength to admit that you don't know something, I believe opens up, it's that vulnerability and it authenticity that we talk so often about on this show. And that leads to more trust from your team. And ultimately that creates a better team. So I think that's very important. But I want to come back to the perfect podcaster. We may have some potential entrepreneurs listening, some potential podcasters who have never gotten started doing what they wanted to do, doing what they kind of had dreamed about doing because they wanted things to be perfect. And you'll never get there. You'll never get to a perfect show. You'll never get to the perfect audio. You'll never get to the perfect product. As an entrepreneur, you'll hear people talk about the minimum viable product, and you put that out there and then iterate on that and make changes to make it better, right? And if you never put out an MVP, that minimum viable product, you will never put anything out. And if you wait until that MVP is perfect, you will never put anything out. They talk in the entrepreneurial space about you should be a little embarrassed about your MVP. I remember the first time I put out an audio meditation, it was atrocious. It was atrocious. Like I went back and listened
John,
to it.
It was probably not that bad.
Exactly. I went back and listened to it.
Post that later after the thing. Post it. Why not?
I will.
But anyway,
I will.
I'm just saying.
I'll share it. And afterwards, I was like, damn, that sucked. But then people provided feedback. They're like, hey, maybe you can change this, maybe you can change that. And it got better. It got better. And if I hadn't ever had that beginner's mindset, hey, okay, you know what? I freaking know everything. This is a perfect podcast, or this is a perfect audio meditation. Don't give me any feedback. But I listened to the feedback and I grew from it and I became better from it. And my product, the audio meditations, became better after it. So that's
great
that's
point. Let me just I want to say also that not just the but the willingness to ask for feedback. Like this is that's a huge, talk about growth mindset. It's that willingness to say like, hey, can you take a look at this for me? Because it
Mhm.
obviously is somebody you trust, someone that you trust and that will give you like honest feedback. I mean, so you got to be aware of who you're asking for feedback from, not somebody that's like, to say it again, toxic or something. Um, but that's like that's very big of you as well, John. Like, and that's that part of that growth and beginner's mindset. It's just like, eating that humble pie. We talk about humility. It's like,
Yeah,
it's very, it doesn't, it's sometimes it can be a little bitter, the humble pie, but there's sweetness, as I guess it kind of digests in your
yeah,
body and in your mind, because then you become a better podcaster. Then you become better at creating audio meditations or anything, because
yeah,
the willingness to ask for help, to be courageous, to not be afraid to one of my acting coaches a long time ago, and that's like, that helped me really get a lot of balls, just being bold, just acting. And I said this before on the podcast. He goes, if you're going to get a bloody nose, you might as well fall flat on your face. And I was like, all right, you know what? You're right. You're right. So I would just go and try, rehearse with all different types of variations on entrances or something like that. But I would learn in that process. That's the
yeah.
thing. Like I would learn by taking that risk and being bold and putting my best effort forward,
Right.
my best effort. Right. And again, not being attached to like, what are people going to think? Or, is this going to sound right? Or that never works because it lacks a tremendous amount of authenticity. You
Yeah,
mentioned the word
yeah,
perfect, John. I think is important here. Perfect. You want to be perfect at something, be perfect at showing up, be perfect at being playful, be perfect at trying. Like those are the three things that I want to be perfect at all the
I
time. And
like
I invite
that.
everyone else as well. It's like I tell my meditation yoga students, so you don't want to be perfect at something, be perfect at showing up. Just
Yeah,
get here. Just get
that's
here,
right.
because that's where we start to learn. That's where we begin to, just access a greater sense of self, because we're working through courage and we're being vulnerable and open.
I love that, man. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is 90% of growth is showing up, and
Yeah.
then the other 10% takes care of itself by your being there, right? Be that
Yeah.
physically or mentally, you're showing
Yeah.
up. That's the big part. I want to get into just a couple of other things, and then we'll get into how steps that you can do to
Yeah.
develop that attitude.
Love it.
But this Zen koan that is super powerful. It says that there was a master and a student,
Mm.
and the master, or rather the student, his name Phaon, was going on a pilgrimage, and the master says, "What is the purpose of this pilgrimage?" And Phaon says, "I don't know." And then the master says, "Well, not knowing is the most intimate." So
Mm.
that this student is like, "I don't know the point of this pilgrimage," but he was doing it anyway, and
Yeah.
not knowing was the beauty. Not knowing why he was going on the pilgrimage
Yeah.
allowed him to have that beginner's mindset, and not
Yeah.
knowing. So that was pretty powerful. And then I cut and paste some notes from this research. We try to do a little research before our shows, and I cut and paste this, and I thought it was great. It
Yeah.
says, "At times, knowing can fog your vision." And that sentence is kind of counterintuitive. A lot of the time people think you have to know everything, but a lot of the time knowing can actually fog your vision. It
Yeah.
keeps us stuck in grooves of patterns and tightly held beliefs,
Yeah.
blinded by sameness and ways of living that limit the growth of heart and mind. When we loosen the grip of knowing and identifying, a journey towards new horizons begins, and we expose ourselves to the possibility that life can look, feel, and be different. That
Mm.
I loved. I had to cut and paste that one and make sure I read it verbatim because it was so powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, let's get into some steps that we can take to develop that attitude of mindfulness, or sorry, the attitude and mindset of beginner's mindset.
Yeah.
And then we'll start to wrap it up, man. The time always
Yeah.
flies on
No,
these shows.
what I'm saying, yeah, it's like things move fast. Like, well,
Yeah.
I think, well, yeah, I'm. We mentioned in notes here, and we've talked about the last few weeks are the reinventing masculinity. There are 5 C's. I think our great is a great attitude, a great part of that, the ingredients of that mindset.
Yeah.
Was curiosity, courage, compassion. I'm missing one.
Yeah, I think we're missing two.
I know. Well, I know commitment. I know commitment is one of
Commitment,
them. Um,
compassion,
like,
courage. Oh, keep caring. Oh man, we're slaughtering that. Ed
I
and
know.
Ed
It's
would
like,
be ashamed. I have the book somewhere, but
yeah. But like those are great way to start. To take those steps. Like, what else comes to your mind as far as we have here stepping out of your comfort zone, letting go of control, being the student. Great opportunity to deal with the limitations brought forth by frustration, know-it-allism. There's rigidity that we talked about, letting go of the callousness of that know-it-allism kind of thing.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I think some people talk about doing something every day that scares them.
yeah.
And
Wow. Yes.
that, doing something every day that scares you doesn't mean like, going skydiving necessarily. Sure, if that's your cup of tea, that's hey, more power to you. But doing something that scares you every day is, hey, jumping on a podcast, right? 2 years ago, if somebody had said, hey, that I was going to be broadcasting live and then turning it into a podcast, I would have been like, no way, I'm an introvert. No way am I doing that. But it scared me, but it has helped.
Yeah.
It's forced me to grow. It's forced me to
Yeah.
grow in ways that I never anticipated. Doing things like public speaking, that's one of people's number one fears. If you're uncomfortable doing that, try it out and see what happens. Sure, you may fall flat on your face, but again, as Will and I were talking about, if you don't learn from that, that's where you're failing, and you can grow from that. So doing something that scares you, doing something that's new to you, doing something that you truly are the beginner at every day or very often, that's going to foster that beginner's mindset. And then going back to my children and the way that they are, asking questions more often. Why?
And asking for help too. Yeah.
Asking for help.
Mm-hmm.
Asking for help is huge. But also just being curious. Why is that? Why is the sky blue? Something as simple as that. Like, why is the sky blue?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I would love to know, why is that? I'm sure I learned that again at one point, but after this show, I'm going to go and look it up because I am curious. But being curious about things, I think that's a way to do it.
Yeah.
And then I've got six like, no joke, lined out ways to navigate and develop that beginner's mindset. I'll run through those real quick, and then I'll turn it over to you for any closing comments and the closing practice. So 6 practices to develop beginner's mindset and navigating the unknown is consciously choose to drive or walk a new way to work, and notice what you see and experience along the way. Noticing what you see.
Yeah, it's like those micro adjustments, little subtle changes, like driving a new way to work, getting in the wonderment of the world, just seeing new things. Yeah, sorry.
And that's an exact, I mean, like my wife and I did that a couple of weeks ago, drove into our neighborhood from the complete other side. We had never done it. And we're like, wow, there's all sorts of houses here that we never knew about. There's great, beautiful things that we never saw. I mean, that's a beginner's mindset. Commit to watching a sunrise every day for 7 days. And I sent a picture to Will this morning of our sunrise out here, and it's just unbelievably beautiful. Share it. And then practice mindful eating. Like, look at the examples of the details of the food. And we talked about mindful meals in the past, but actually taking in all the senses that come into play as you eat those meals. Yeah, there's the sunset. For those of you who aren't listening, Will's whole
sunrise.
Sunrise. Yes, sunrise. That's the sunrise this morning, this very morning. So for those of you who are listening, Will held that up, and maybe if you really want to see what that looks like, you can check it out on the YouTube version when this comes out there. But we talked about mindful eating, tapping into your creative child through dance, art, painting, coloring, yoga. Hey, that's a great way. List 10 things that you do not want to do. Acknowledging the things we don't want to do often gives us insight into what we do want to do. And then we've talked about this before as well. Journaling, that's one of the very powerful things that you can do to change the way that your mind is wired, but it can also open up that curiosity and that beginner's mindset. So those are some That's what beginner's mindset is. That's how to foster it. And that's why it's
Yeah.
important to both you and your teams. I think we covered everything we promised we were going to cover, man. Over to you.
I just want to double down on a couple of, the essence of some of these things is getting physical. Like, instead of it just being always like, and I think it's important to, to read and get more knowledge, like information. I think it's like, I heard Wayne Dyer a long time ago made a distinction of like information and inspiration, right? When you're information is when you're in form, right? You're always in form, whereas inspiration means you're in spirit. And it's a way to kind of bridge the gap is the physical nature of doing things, right? So, not like I do I've done some dance before. I mean, not dance, but like some cha-cha, merengue, just learning the dance steps and stuff like that. As an example, or cooking, because when we get physical, John, and we come right up against, especially when we were super clumsy and we are a brand newbie to whatever you're trying to work with and be with, really begin to run up against those feelings of the know-it-all and the control freak. And that's where you can get to be aware of those feelings, right? Brought up through a physical experience, and then you can become more aware, and that'll help you become a better student, a better beginner, because you'll be aware of whatever those emotions like frustration or anxiousness or that arrogance or anxiety, because that's going to be part of this path as well. Is not just like, oh, I'm going to be a great beginner. I'm going to like, I like to think of when I tell my students in class, it's like we're stepping into the sandbox. I used to love going to the sandbox when I was a kid. You just play and you wreck stuff, you build stuff, right? It's super fun, right? So I call it like the sandbox theory. So it's like we come in, we step in, we play, we do the best we can. So we're intentional, right? It's not we're flopping around. Our intention is to do the best we can. Again, being perfect at trying, and the results don't matter, because what matters is that you put your best effort forth. And that's always going to give you some sort of results and feedback. And then it's like, but the joy that comes with trying, last thing I'll say is like, I did my very first audition for theater, or I think it was for a TV production. This is back when I lived back in Philadelphia. And it was horrible, John. It was absolutely horrible. I mean, I was so nervous going in, right? I had this resume and headshot, and it was an improv audition. And, I was new, and I put down, I have a German accent, an English accent. So I'm going through this improv. They're like, oh, can you do it in an English accent? And I was like, oh, sure I can, right? And I just moving through this freaking audition with this like terrible, right? In the beginning, in the middle of this, like me trying, they're like, hey, what accent is that? I'm like, oh, it's British accent. Oh my God. I was like mortified I was like all hot and I was sweaty. But when I walked out of that room, John, I was like, it is never going to get worse than that. Like that is the worst audition I will ever have. And I felt triumphant getting the other side. I had such a great, it was a terrible experience in it, but the rewards outside, it's like, I learned something.
Right.
And now I can go forward with that knowledge.
And you lived through that moment. You lived through it.
Thank you, John. I'm still here. Right.
Yeah,
I'm still here.
Yeah.
And it's it's maybe a better podcaster.
Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. Hey, and one thing, before you start your practice or the grounding practice, for those who are watching and have never done a meditation, have never done a grounding practice or mindful practice of any sort, try it out. Yeah. See how you feel. Go into it with that beginner's mindset and really be curious about the practice, be curious about what happens mentally, physically, emotionally, just in the short practice that Will is going to lead. I encourage you to jump into it with a beginner's mindset. Be curious, asking why, asking how, asking what happens afterwards. So I'll turn it over to you with that.
Well, boy, that's like, is it my turn? Pressure. What am I doing now, John?
No pressure.
What am I doing? I better not screw this up. I'm just kidding. Awesome, guys. All right. Thank you for that, John. What a great segue into our grounding practice. So maybe change your seat, right? Sometimes, it's doing the same things all the time is considered crazy. So maybe sit a different way, or maybe stand up, or if you're, walk around the grocery store or something and you can't sit, then make contact with yourself in some way. Interlace your fingers, maybe bring a hand across your belly or your chest, or both. Exhale your breath out. We'll just keep it real simple. I just want you to feel yourself sitting here and breathe deeply in. Exhale very slowly out, and just feel your body in this space. If you're sitting down, you can feel your sit bones. If you're standing up, you can feel your feet on the ground. And just notice simply the flow of your breathing in and out of your nose. Developing the skills of breath, and just see if you can slow it down and make it a little deeper. And just simply notice your breath. And just gaining control of your breath, but not in a rigid way, but in a way that feels good, that softens you, that allows you to be present. Keeps you connected to your heart. And that willingness to try. Just find 3 more breaths. Inhale through the nose. See if you can create a bigger breath. Keep going. Inhale more. And then pause for a second here. And as gently as you can through the nose, exhale out. Couple more. Inhale bigger. Can you feel the belly drop, or the breath drop into your pelvis and expand into your chest and lift up the very top of your chest? And then very consciously breathe as softly as you can out. Last one. Off the exhale. Just take a moment and notice how you feel emotionally. It's okay if you're still battling with anxiety or frustration or stress, whatever. But just being aware and noticing is, again, part of that showing up and practicing, doing the best you can. Get ready. If your eyes are closed, open them up. Take a moment and thank yourself for practicing. Oh, and John, thank you for this. This has been, wasn't sure what was going to happen today, but this has been, wow, really inspiring, John.
Same here, man.
But thank you for this. This is great. Yeah.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. I always appreciate the space. Always appreciate the discussion and the energy that I walk away with. So thank you for this. And for our viewers, our listeners, please share the show, share the podcast, share the fact that we do this on LinkedIn Live on Fridays. And please, if you can, give us a review on the platforms where you can. Give us a review, give us a rating, give us some feedback. Again, as we talk about being that beginner's mindset, we want to make this better every time. So if there's feedback that you have, we want that feedback. We want to hear it. We're beginners.
Yeah, exactly.
And we always
John,
will be.
I didn't realize that someone asked me, it's like, hey, how do I leave a review on podcast? And I was like, oh, right. So if you go to show, right, if you go to our show, go to Mind Tech Mindfulness, if you click go to show and then scroll at the bottom and click write a review, there it is.
There it is. So, there it is. Yeah, I think that's on Apple. I don't know if you can leave it on the other platforms, but hey, listen on the other platforms too. But yeah, if you're on Apple and you can give us a review, 5-star rating, or hey, just give us a share it with those who need to hear these messages. That's what's important. We don't do it for any money. It's a hobby, and we really enjoy it, but we're just doing it to share the message so that we can help others live happier, healthier, more fulfilling lives. So thanks for tuning in. If you tuned in live today, and Will and I will be jumping on the LinkedIn and the Facebook later to reply to any comments or questions that were made. Thank you for the engagement. We appreciate you being here with us. And that is a wrap.
Thanks for joining Will and John on Men Talking Mindfulness. If you enjoyed the show, please like and share it with your friends and family, and please, we would appreciate a review too. Until next time, this has been Men Talking Mindfulness. Thanks for showing up.